He opened by reflecting on the enduring nature of proxy conflicts and the need for discreet diplomacy. You know, you see proxies, ancient wars, like everywhere. We found out that ability to move in a discreet way and in below the radar, and making sure that conflicts can be resolved, even sometimes can be prevented before it happens, and can be resolved in quiet rooms. He went on to note that his country had proved that approach is effective. And we proved that Qatar became like a responsible player in that field. He emphasized that this approach is rooted in national ethos. Mediation actually is something that's enshrined in our constitution since the founder of the country. He's someone who is always calling for peace, always calling for engagement, for dialogue. And this is just, you know, a heritage that we have. He added that the country is happy that we are today defined as a global mediator, not only for the region, but this trust that we have built throughout the years in our mediations in the region made our mediation becoming more global. And you see that's going all the way from Latin America to Africa to Asia, and that's basically what we are doing. Following that statement, he was asked whether progress was being made on other mediation fronts, pointing to recent engagements in Latin America, Africa, Asia. The question, were there any cases he felt would be resolved soon? He answered, all of them are ongoing right now. Honestly, I cannot distinguish one from another. But for example, with the recent conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan, we hosted a round of talks that led to a ceasefire. Now, the second round of talks to extend the ceasefire has been ongoing in Turkey in the last few days. And this is something which we are hoping that we'll see a result as soon as possible, he noted further. But then DRC and Rwanda, it's also a very complex issue. We try to make sure that progress in the right direction and that we have the enough understanding in order to propose for them meaningful solutions. At that point, the floor was opened for questions from council members and remote participants. A journalist from the International Crisis Group asked about Qatar's role in mediation with Venezuela and whether current US actions in the Caribbean were affecting those talks. He replied, regarding our efforts with Venezuela, we started this during President Biden administration when there was an engagement between the two governments, and this engagement actually has led to a release of some Americans back home. Now, with President Trump, we've been re-engaging with them. If the US are still interested in engaging to find a solution with Venezuela, we are ready to mediate and to help to facilitate that. But currently, there is nothing solid is ongoing. Another question from the former Special Envoy for Afghan Women, Girls and Human Rights turned to Qatar's long-standing work in Afghanistan and asked how Doha saw a pathway toward greater inclusivity and stability, given reports of a hardline turn by the Taliban. She said, despite your efforts, they're increasingly becoming hardline. They've shut down the internet for 2 days. They continue to crack down on a wide range of groups, have continued to deprive women of education. What do you see as the pathway towards moving Afghanistan towards greater inclusivity and stability? And what should the role of the international community be? Because we're seeing Afghanistan completely disappear from the attention of the broader international community. He began answering by emphasizing that Qatar has been engaged for quite some time and acknowledged the difficulties posed by the current situation. He stressed that diplomacy is a long game, that shifting entrenched behaviors, addressing rights, restoring trust, and engaging with various actors requires sustained dialogue, patience, and quiet efforts behind the scenes. He noted that while public cues may appear discouraging, such as internet shutdowns or restrictions on women's education, the mediator's work often continues in less visible channels. He emphasized 3 key elements for progress. 1, sustained engagement with all parties, including the governing authorities, oppositional actors, civil society, and regional stakeholders. 2, incremental gains rather than immediate breakthroughs, building confidence through trust building and enabling modest reforms before tackling the major structural issues. And 3, supporting the international community's role, not by large public programs, but by enabling dialogue, providing safe spaces, and ensuring that any agreements reached are meaningfully followed by implementation. He underscored that mediation is not a guarantee of success, but a process of opening possibilities. He said the international community should complement mediation by offering consistent pressure for inclusivity, human rights, and rule of law, and by making clear that silence or abandonment would undermine the prospects of peace and stability. Returning to the broader theme, he reiterated that his country's approach is rooted in its identity and constitutional commitment, that mediation is not simply a policy tool, but part of how they view their place in the world. He said that by working in quiet rooms and below the radar, their role has grown beyond the region. He pointed to the Latin America, Africa, Asia stretch of their engagements as proof of their global reach. He also reflected on the complexities of mediation. Not every case moves at the pace one hopes. Not all actors are willing, and success cannot always be measured by formal agreements alone. Progress may be seen in smaller steps, ceasefires, prisoner releases, dialogue rounds, trust building, rather than headline peace accords. He stressed that meaningful solutions require deep understanding of context, culture, domestic political realities, and regional dynamics. Turning back to the question of mediation in countries like the DRC and Rwanda, he acknowledged that these are very complex issues. He said his country tries to ensure we have enough understanding in order to propose for them meaningful solutions. In doing so, they aim to avoid superficial fixes, seeking instead to craft proposals that reflect the realities on the ground and align incentives of the parties involved. In closing, he reaffirmed that the mediating country remains committed to playing its role, not as a headline seeker, but as a discreet facilitator of dialogue, enabling actors to explore options they might otherwise avoid. He emphasized that while the work is slow, sometimes invisible, it remains essential. He expressed hope that with sustained engagement, incremental gains and international support, the growing list of mediation fronts in Asia, Africa, Latin America can move from dialogue to tangible improvements in peace and stability. He left the audience with this thought, that while wars may be ancient and proxies many, the ability to act quietly below the radar in quiet rooms holds its own kind of power, a power of prevention, of resolution, and of hope.